Welcome to Bass Case 011. I'm your host, Phil. In 3. Playing in 3, 3/4 time. 3/4 time signature. Other odd meters like 5/4, 6/8 poses challenges for bass players mostly for bass players that haven't worked it out and practiced those meters. There's nothing really difficult about them, but you need to get the feel for them. And like I'm saying, and I was thinking last night, there's nothing inherently difficult about playing in 3/4. When they say odd meters, it means, it's not your typical 4/4 or 2/4. But like I mentioned in the last episode, we as people in general and musicians too are 4-oriented. Most pop music, hip hop, country music, and yes, even jazz is in 4. But you can train yourself to play in 3, and it's easy. A lot of tunes in 3. I remember playing through all blues on a previous episode. Little B's poem, Bluesette, Someday My Prince Will Come, Coltrane's version of My Favorite Things, even the original version, all in 3. All recordings worth checking out. Just a little factoid, a little trivia is some tunes were in 3 but are now played in 4. Fly Me to the Moon, it was written and performed in 3 till Quincy Jones, when he was arranging for Basie and Sinatra, turning into a swinging 4. Now I just can't even imagine playing that in 3. My Favorite Things, like I mentioned, it's in 3. I think Luther Vandross does it in 4 on one of his recordings. I think it's a Christmas album he did years ago. But it's food for thought of why 3/4 and 4/4 are different and how they can invoke different mood and feelings. When I'm thinking about 3, which some people call a waltz, but it's not really always a waltz unless it's a certain tempo. But a waltz is a dance, and it has a certain dance-like feel. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. When you can imagine those waltz type moves. 4 swings a different and simpler way, if I can say that. You just think about that ride cymbal and that bass player walking. Doon, 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 doon. So how can we as bass players effectively practice and play in 3/4? I break it down with my bass players in my studio. I break it down with myself when I'm practicing, when I'm working on something in 3 and I want to think, my 3/4 chops aren't happening. And I'm just talking about just my basic walking and comping under a soloist. And I build it from the ground up. I'll play a dotted half, boom, 2, 3, boom, 2, 3, boom, 2, 3, boom. Good way to get the feel for it. A really good way to enter the tune. Dotted quarters work. Boom, boom, dunk, boom, boom. And of course, walking in 3, just 1, 2, 3, ding, dunk, ding. All are effective and all have their place. I was listening to Miles Davis's recording of Someday My Prince Will Come, and Paul Chambers in the intro pedals the 5 chord, the F, the tune's in B flat, and he pedals the F in quarters for the intro. It creates this kind of dynamic tension. And as Miles enters the head, Paul Chambers stays on that F. And then for the second part of the head, he moves to dotted halves and permutations of it, right? Not really strict with it for the rest of the head. And then for all of Miles' solo, he kind of sticks around 1. He's got some broken time figures and playing off the beat, but he still maintains that dotted half feel, through it all. And it's real effective because it's building up some tension. And then when Coltrane's solo happens, he goes straight on full quarters, and it shows you how much control the bass player has in most musical situations. We don't necessarily have to start playing immediately when the tune starts, or we can switch feels depending on what's happening in the tune. We can make a lot of things happen or not happen inadvertently when we play with time. And that's basically what we do when we go from a 1 feel, those dotted halves, to sort of a pseudo 2 feel in 3, dotted quarters or the full out walking. I remember one of my professors at North Texas once saying that when the bass player goes to quarters, that's the ceiling. That when we start walking, that's the intensity of what we can do. About basically all we can do after that is get louder or softer. And building that texture from 2-feel to walking can happen gently and beautifully. And I'm not just talking about in 3, I'm talking about in 4 too. Holding back and even not playing is always an option. You know, when we hear the count off 1, 2, 3, 4, we don't have to start coming with the drums. You know, we can wait sometimes. You know, if the music's calling for that, we can hold back and come in on the bridge. I can't think of how exciting that makes things happen. But I'm kind of digressing here a little bit, and I'm going to save those points for a future episode on how we enter a tune. For today, I'm going to deal with Wes Montgomery's West Coast Blues, yet another blues, but it's a blues in B flat and it's in 3. Now, something that you want to be aware of, that it's not unusual for jazz musicians and others to play a blues in 3, but there's something that inherently happens a lot of times when we do that. You listen to Wes Montgomery's West Coast Blues, it stops becoming a 12-bar blues form and it becomes a 24-bar blues form because we double up on the measures. So, for instance, in a standard B-flat blues in 4, the first bar is B-flat 7 and the second one is E-flat 7. When we play in 3, particularly on this tune, the first 2 bars are that one chord and the second 2 bars are the E-flat. So everything's doubled up. So it's something to think about, but it kind of opens up the tune and it gives everything a different feel. That's a great record to check out by Wes Montgomery. Okay, so here it is. On example 1, I'm going to play through the form of West Coast Blues, and I'm just going to play dotted halves on the downbeat, much like Paul Chambers did on One Day My Prince Will Come. I'm just boom, to boom, to boom, boom. So here's example 1, just dotted halves. There's that 4 chord. 1, 2, 3. It's good to be counting to yourself. Now this would be the second line, right? But it's 8 bars instead of 4. And I like to count. And man, I'm real big on counting. 1, 2, 3. Here's the turn back. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, top, boom. Just feeling it like that, making it real simple. The counting part, you know, we were in combo the other day and I took my Sharpie out and wrote on the top of one of my bass player's charts, I wrote ABC, and when we came to a break in the tune, I talked about ABC. It's one of my favorite things from the movie Glengarry Glen Ross, because he's the actor Alec Baldwin comes out and he says, always be closing. And I stole that and I said, always be counting. Because as musicians, we need to be on top of that. And counting, there's no shame. I remember telling this 15, 16, 17 years ago to one of my bass players, there's no shame in counting. Counting keeps us in there, and it's something everybody does. Okay, example 2, same tune, except I'm going to go into what I term, and a lot of people term, a 2-feel in 3. So I'm going to be playing those dotted quarters. Dunk, 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 dunk. You know, some people may call it a 2 against 3 feel. So here it is, just with roots. Here we go, example 2. Okay, here it is, just playing roots. 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Roots are good. There's nothing wrong with roots. There's no shame in roots. Keeps the band going. 1, 2, 3. Don't stop counting. Here's the turn back. 5 chord, going to 4 chord. Feels good. One more time through the form. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 1. Boom, 2, 3, 2, 3, 1, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, turn around. F7 to E flat 7, back to the 1 chord. One more time, just get a feel for that. Good idea to play along with these. I'm kind of playing with the time a little bit, right? Boom, 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 boom. Yeah, drop in an octave in there. Still making it, still staying on the root. Yeah, just little pushes to the next chord. Still simple. Now keep counting to keep that downbeat square, okay? Now example 3, same thing as example 2, but I'm going to be using roots and fifths, you know, a bass player's best friend. Same 2 feel, boom, boom, do 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 ba do da ba ba dee dee do. I like to sing the melody while I'm doing it and really tie myself into the tune. So here's example 3, same as example 2, but I'm using roots and fifths. Same 2 feel, you know, that 2 against 3 feel. So here's example 3. Opens it up a little bit more. Boom, bing, boom. Just roots and fifths. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Here's that turn back to E flat 7. Back to the 1 chord. Keeping that downbeat square. One more time through the form. Here's that 4 chord. Playing around with roots and fifths in different octaves too. Always a good idea. It's right there. Here's the beauty of it. I'm not staying out of that half first position of either the electric or upright bass. Everything's nice and tight, keeping everything nice and simple. No reason to run around the neck here. Just holding everything down for the soloist. Like I said, keep counting. Okay, now example 4. I'm going to put in some walking here. Same thing. I'm going to keep everything nice and tight on the bottom part of the neck. Like I said, we don't always have to be moving up and down the neck, especially if you're unfamiliar with the time feel, especially if you're unfamiliar with the chord changes. Keep everything nice and simple, okay? So here's example 4, West Coast Blues. Now we're walking some changes. 2, 3, 1. 2, 3, going to 4. 2, 3, E flat, E flat, flat. 2, 3, 1, 1. Turn around, boom. 2, 3, E flat, back to 1 chord. Back to the top and 1, 2, 3. E flat 7. Opening it up, but I'm still staying that bottom part of the neck. I'm just using a lot of the G string. E flat 7. Back to the 1 chord. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 5 chord to the 4 chord. 1 chord. 1 chord and 1, 2, 3, 1. Easy. Take the tempos down if you need to. I'm playing about 110 right here. If you want to go slower, always a good idea. James Moody said, a wise man practices slowly and a wiser man practices more slowly. And I really believe in what he's saying when you do that. You can, and you know, we have a natural reflex, I think, as people and definitely as musicians that we want to play faster all the time. Take it down to almost unmanageable slow tempos. I was kind of playing around with singing the melody. I like to do that. I like to learn the melody, first of all, and then I like to sing it while I'm playing in there. It ties me into the tune better. I feel like I know where I'm at all the time. The more that I do that, the more that when I'm walking behind soloists, is I have an idea of where the tune is at, because not just through the changes, but through things are happening. When I start taking my solos, I start thinking about the melody. I might even quote pieces of that. Check out recordings of Wes Montgomery and check out the play along. It's some of the best instruction and practicing you can do. Just being on, I was doing this before I recorded those tracks, was just putting on Wes Montgomery's recording of this and just playing along with it. It's fun. Maybe transcribe the bass line. It's something I'm going to be talking about in subsequent episodes is, where do we get our bass lines from? Sometimes you get them from a place like this, or they're already transcribed for you. But sometimes, I'm listening to some chord changes or learning a tune, and I'm like, I want to hear what, I've got a bass line for it, but I want to see what Paul Chambers did. I want to see what Ron Carter did. I want to see what Christian McBride does over those changes. And if I hear something I like, I'm going to transcribe it, notate it, and then absorb it. So there it is in 3, and I will see you soon.